Hello preps, welcome to week 6 of our online learning. If you're allowed to do the paper mache task this week, then you can keep following this video. If not, that's perfectly okay. Go back to the activity description and click on the other one. But let's see what we need to do for paper mache this week. We're going to be making a paper mache cup. So what is paper mache? Paper mache started in China, where they invented paper. They used it to start making helmets and things, and then they would cover it with very hard materials like clay or lacquer. It was named paper mache by the French though, so by French workers in London who used this process. Paper mache in French actually means chewed paper. Oh my goodness. And that's what they used to do. They used to chew the paper to make it go all soft, and then they would form the structure of these bowls or these other things, and then it would go hard, so then they could put clay and things over the top. Oh my goodness. Before we start, I want everyone to make sure that they ask an adult for some help. This can be tricky and messy, and make sure that it is okay for an adult to help you. Use the kitchen or the laundry or maybe an outside area because we might be making a little bit of a mess. If you can't do today's activity because mum and dad are busy or it's not okay to make a little bit of a mess, you don't have the time to do it, that's perfectly fine. Just go back to our activity description in Seesaw and click on the other project so you can do the other project this time. So it's absolutely fine. You don't miss out on art. What you will need for today's task if you are doing the paper mache task. We will need some mixing bowls, some scissors, newspaper, flour, any kind of flour, water, something to mix with, oil, a paintbrush, a cup. It needs to be a flexible cup that we can bend, and an adult to help you because it can be a bit tricky. Step number 1 is to get the paper ready. We need to cut our newspaper in half from top to bottom. Then we need to rip the paper into inch-thick strips sideways. Newspaper is a lot easier to rip sideways. It doesn't like to rip from top to bottom. Separate all your paper and then put them in a bowl ready to use. We need lots of paper ready to go. Step number 2, we need to get the glue ready. Whatever measuring cup you are using for the flour, you are going to use the same measuring cup for the water. So it doesn't matter what size measuring cup it is. I used a half cup. So because I added a half cup of flour, I used that same measuring cup and I put in half a cup of water. Then I mix it all up until it's nice and smooth. It should look a little bit like pancake batter. Step number 3 is to oil the cup. Now, if you have a spray oil, you can spray the outside of the cup. Otherwise, you can pour a little bit of liquid oil into a bowl with your paintbrush. Put your hand inside the cup so that it's easier to hold, and then just lightly brush some oil over the outside. We do this so that when the paper mache dries, it does not stick to the cup. Step number 4 is to start our paper mache. So take a strip of the newspaper and drag one side across the glue mixture. You only need glue on one side of the paper. While you're holding your strip of wet newsprint, use your fingers to wipe away the extra glue off the newsprint. So drag your fingers down the newsprint to wipe off that extra glue, and it'll fall back into the bowl. You can also see me do this in the video at the end. Start covering your cup with newspaper and make sure you don't use too much glue. We just want our newspaper to be wet. We don't want it to be soaking. Step number 5 is time to paper mache time. Keep covering your cup. You will need at least 4 or 5 layers of the paper mache on your cup. Make sure you cover the bottom of your paper mache cup. You want your paper to crisscross, you want it to overlap, and you want it you want there to be lots and lots of layers. If you have too much glue, you can always put some dry pieces of paper onto your paper mache and it will absorb that extra glue. Step number 6 is it's time to let our paper mache dry out. If your paper mache is too wet, you can use some strips of dry paper to absorb some of that extra glue. Once your cup has been covered 4 or 5 times, put it somewhere it can dry out, either outside in the sun or just on your kitchen bench sitting on a piece of newspaper. Right? It will take 2 or 3 days to fully dry out and then it will be nice and hard. I want everyone to click on the video link in Seesaw and in the activity description and watch the video of me doing the paper mache. All right, you can have this playing while you are doing your paper mache so that you can keep looking at what I'm doing to make sure you're doing the right thing. You can pause and rewind and rewatch bits of it as well. So I want everyone to have a look at that video. And next week, we will be painting our paper mache cup. So just a heads up for next week, you will need paint and a paintbrush. If you don't have paint, I'll show you how to make some. You will need some shaving foam or liquid glue or some of your paper mache glue and of course some food dye. So those are the things you'll need next week if you want to make paint. Or else if you have paint, feel free to use that. I hope everyone's had lots of fun this week creating our paper mache cup.